The hidden meaning behind synchronicity. Have you ever experienced a moment so strange, so perfectly timed, that you couldn't explain it away? A moment that seemed to arrive from somewhere beyond logic. You think about someone you haven't seen in years, and suddenly they call. You open a book at random, and the exact words you need are staring back at you. A particular number begins appearing everywhere. On clocks, receipts, license plates, phone numbers, again and again. At first, you ignore it. Then it keeps happening. And eventually, a question begins to form in the back of your mind. What if this isn't random? Most people dismiss these experiences. They call them coincidences, chance, probability, a trick of the mind. And perhaps you've done the same. Because that's what we've been taught. We've been taught that reality is mechanical, predictable, material, that every event can be explained through physical causes alone, that meaning exists only inside the human mind. But what if meaning is not merely something you create? What if meaning is something you discover? What if reality itself contains patterns that are trying to reveal something to you? This question fascinated one of the greatest psychological thinkers who ever lived, a man who spent decades studying dreams, symbols, myths, religion, and the hidden architecture of the human psyche. His name was Carl Jung, and Jung arrived at a conclusion that shocked even him. There are moments in life when events connect through meaning rather than cause. Moments when the outer world and the inner world seem to mirror each other. Moments when reality behaves less like a machine and more like a conversation. He called these moments synchronicities, not coincidences, not accidents. Synchronicities, meaningful connections between your inner life and the events unfolding around you. To Jung, these experiences were not signs of superstition. They were clues, evidence that something deeper was operating beneath the surface of ordinary reality. Something most people never notice. Something that quietly influences every human life. And perhaps this is why synchronicities often appear during the most important moments of our existence. When we're lost, when we're suffering, when we're standing at a crossroads, when one chapter of life is ending and another is trying to begin. It is as if reality itself starts whispering, offering guidance, leaving symbols, presenting opportunities, creating encounters that seem impossible to explain through logic alone. The strange thing is that once you begin noticing these patterns, they seem to multiply. The signs become clearer. The connections become stronger. The feeling grows that life may be speaking a language you've never been taught how to understand. A language of symbols. A language of timing. A language of meaning. And once you begin seeing it, it becomes impossible to completely ignore because the question changes. No longer, is this a coincidence? But rather, what is this trying to show me? Tonight, we're going to explore one of Carl Jung's most fascinating ideas. We're going to uncover what synchronicities really are, why they appear, why some people seem to experience them constantly, while others never notice them, and most importantly, what these mysterious moments may be revealing about the hidden journey unfolding inside your own soul. Because by the end of this video, you may discover that the most important events in your life were never random at all, and perhaps neither was your decision to watch this video. The lie of randomness. From the moment you entered the world, you began learning how reality works, not through direct experience, but through the explanations given to you by others. Parents, teachers, institutions, society. Little by little, you absorbed a worldview, a map of reality. You were taught that success comes from planning, that outcomes come from effort, that events follow clear chains of cause and effect. And while there is truth in these lessons, there is also something missing, something subtle, something that many cultures once understood, but modern society largely forgot. The understanding that life is not merely a sequence of events. It is also a sequence of meanings. Ancient civilizations paid close attention to symbols, dreams, omens, patterns in nature, the movements of stars, the recurring themes that emerge in human experience. They believed the universe was alive with significance, that existence possessed an intelligence woven into its very structure. But as modern civilization evolved, another perspective emerged, a perspective that brought extraordinary technological progress, yet at the same time narrowed our vision. the world became increasingly viewed as a machine, a collection of separate parts interacting through physical laws. Only what could be measured was considered real. Only what could be tested was considered trustworthy. Mystery became suspect. Intuition became secondary. Meaning became subjective. And slowly, humanity began losing contact with an entire dimension of experience. Not because it disappeared, but because we stopped paying attention to it. Think about childhood. Children naturally perceive patterns adults overlook. They sense atmospheres. They notice symbolism. They often trust intuition before logic. A child can walk into a room and immediately feel something is wrong, even when no one says a word. A child can have a dream that feels deeply significant. A child can sense connections that adults quickly dismiss. Yet as we grow older, we're taught to ignore these impressions. We learn to suppress uncertainty, to distrust intuition, to prioritize facts over feelings, analysis over awareness, explanation over wonder. Eventually, many people become disconnected from a fundamental part of themselves, their relationship with mystery. This is where Jung's work becomes so revolutionary, because Jung refused to accept that reality could be reduced to mechanics alone. He believed that beneath the surface of ordinary consciousness existed an immense psychological landscape, a living world of symbols, archetypes, instincts, and hidden patterns. A world that continually influences our choices, relationships, dreams, and perceptions. According to Jung, most people live only on the surface of life. They focus on external achievements, external goals, external identities. But beneath all of that lies a deeper current, a hidden movement of the soul. And synchronicities often appear when that deeper current is trying to get our attention. Imagine standing beside a river. On the surface, you see random ripples, random movement, random disturbances. But beneath the surface, there's a powerful current moving in a specific direction. The ripples are not random. They are expressions of something deeper. Jung believed human life works in a similar way. What appears random on the surface may actually be connected at a deeper level. The challenge is that modern thinking conditions us to see only the ripples, not the current beneath them. We become experts at observing events, but novices at interpreting meaning. And because of this, many of the most important messages life sends us pass unnoticed. A recurring dream, a strange encounter, a symbol that keeps appearing, an unexpected opportunity, a person who enters our life at precisely the right moment. Most people explain these things away before they ever have the chance to understand them. Yet every so often, something happens that refuses to be ignored. A coincidence so precise, so emotionally charged, so meaningful, that even the most skeptical mind pauses and begins to wonder, could there be something more? That question changed the course of Jung's life. And in the next part of our journey, we're going to explore the extraordinary experience that led him to develop one of the most mysterious ideas in modern psychology, the concept of synchronicity. The moment Carl Jung could no longer ignore the pattern. There are moments in a person's life when a single event changes the way they see reality forever. For Carl Jung, one such moment occurred during a therapy session. A young woman sat across from him. She was highly intelligent, highly rational, the kind of person who analyzed everything, every feeling, every dream, every possibility. Her intellect had become a fortress. Nothing could end her without passing through the gate of logic. And because of this, her psychological growth had stalled. She understood herself intellectually, but she wasn't truly changing. Then something unusual happened. The night before their session, she had a dream. In the dream, someone handed her a golden scarab, an ancient symbol associated with rebirth and transformation. As she described the dream to Jung, something tapped against the window beside them. Jung turned. Outside was an insect, a rare beetle, remarkably similar to the scarab from her dream. He opened the window, caught the insect, and handed it to her. "Here is your scarab," he said. For a moment, the walls of her certainty collapsed. Something impossible had happened. An inner image had been mirrored by an external event, not caused by it, not predicted by it, but connected to it through meaning. This experience became one of the foundations for Jung's theory of synchronicity, because the deeper he looked, the more examples he found. people dreaming about events before they happened, symbols appearing repeatedly during major life transitions, chance encounters that altered entire destinies, moments where the inner and outer worlds aligned with astonishing precision. Jung realized that traditional explanations were insufficient. Cause and effect could not fully account for what he was observing. There seemed to be another principle operating beneath reality, a principle based not on causation, but on meaning. This was a radical idea. Even today, it remains controversial, because our culture is comfortable with physical explanations. We understand gravity, electricity, chemistry, biology, but meaning is different. Meaning cannot be weighed. It cannot be measured with a ruler, and yet meaning has the power to completely transform a human life. Think about it. Two people can experience the exact same event. One forgets it immediately. The other remembers it for the rest of their life. Why? Because meaning changes everything. Meaning determines what matters. Meaning shapes destiny. Meaning influences identity. Meaning guides decisions. And according to Jung, synchronicities occur when meaning becomes visible, when something hidden beneath ordinary reality briefly reveals itself. Imagine your life as a giant tapestry. From your perspective, you see only a few threads, a few moments, a few events, a few choices, but somewhere beyond your limited viewpoint, a larger pattern is emerging. Most of the time, you cannot see it. Yet occasionally, a thread lights up, a connection becomes visible, and for a brief moment, you glimpse the design. That glimpse is what synchronicity feels like. A sudden awareness that events are connected in ways you never expected, not through physical force, but through psychological significance. This idea fascinated Jung because it challenged one of the deepest assumptions of modern thinking, the assumption that human beings are separate from reality. Jung suspected that separation was partly an illusion, that the psyche and the world were intertwined far more deeply than people realized. And if he was right, then synchronicities were not simply curious accidents. They were windows, openings, moments when a hidden unity beneath existence became visible. The more Jung explored this possibility, the further his investigations led him into mythology, religion, alchemy, ancient wisdom traditions, dream analysis, and eventually into one of the most profound ideas he ever developed, an idea that may explain why people across different cultures, continents, and centuries repeatedly encounter the same symbols, the same stories, the same patterns, the same mysterious experiences, an idea known as the collective unconscious. And once you understand it, synchronicities begin to make far more sense than they ever did before, because the signs appearing in your life may not be random messages from outside of you. They may be emerging from a deeper layer of reality that exists within all of us. Let's go deeper. The collective unconscious, the hidden ocean beneath humanity. Most people believe their mind belongs entirely to them. Their thoughts, their memories, their emotions, their dreams, their experiences, all personal, all individual. And to a certain extent, that's true. But Jung believed there was another layer beneath the personal mind, a deeper layer shared by every human being who has ever lived. He called it the collective unconscious. To understand this idea, imagine standing beside the ocean. On the surface, you see countless waves. Each wave appears separate, independent, unique. But beneath the surface, all those waves belong to the same vast body of water. Human beings are similar. On the surface, we appear separate, different personalities, different cultures, different languages, different lives. Yet beneath the surface lies a shared psychological foundation, a hidden ocean connecting us all. According to Jung, this deeper layer contains universal patterns called archetypes. Archetypes are not learned. They are inherited tendencies of the psyche, ancient blueprints shaping how human beings experience reality. And once you start recognizing them, you begin seeing them everywhere. The hero, the wise old man, the mother, the child, the king, the trickster, the shadow. These figures appear across civilizations separated by thousands of years. Cultures that never interacted somehow created remarkably similar myths, similar stories, similar symbols. Why? Jung believed it was because these patterns emerge from the same underlying psychological source, the collective unconscious. This is why certain stories affect us so deeply, why certain symbols feel strangely familiar, why certain dreams seem ancient even when we've never experienced them before. The psyche speaks through archetypes. It speaks through symbols. And perhaps most importantly, it speaks through synchronicities. Imagine that your conscious mind is only a small island. Beneath it lies a vast invisible continent. The conscious mind sees only what is directly in front of it. The unconscious sees far more. It perceives connections beyond ordinary awareness, patterns stretching across time, relationships hidden beneath the surface, possibilities not yet visible. And sometimes, when circumstances are right, those hidden patterns emerge into consciousness, not as logical explanations, but as symbols, dreams, intuitions, and synchronicities. This may explain why synchronicities often feel deeply personal, because they are not random events imposed from outside. They resonate with something already happening within. They reflect a process unfolding in the depths of the psyche, a process Jung called individuation, the journey toward becoming who you truly are. And this journey is far more mysterious than most people realize, because the soul rarely speaks through ordinary language. It speaks through images, through feelings, through symbols, through meaningful encounters, through moments that stop you in your tracks and force you to pay attention. A particular book appears at exactly the right moment. A stranger says something you've desperately needed to hear. A dream reveals a truth you've been avoiding. A symbol follows you everywhere you go. At first, these events seem unrelated, but eventually a pattern emerges. And once the pattern becomes visible, something remarkable happens. You begin feeling guided, not controlled, not manipulated, guided, as though life itself is participating in your transformation. This is where many people become uncomfortable, because if synchronicities are real, if the unconscious truly communicates through symbols, if reality is filled with meaning, then perhaps life is not as random as we've been taught. Perhaps there is an intelligence operating beneath the surface, not necessarily an external intelligence, but an organizing principle woven into existence itself, a hidden order, a deeper harmony, a living pattern connecting inner and outer worlds. And if that pattern exists, then the next question becomes unavoidable. How does it communicate? How do these messages actually appear? What language does the unconscious use? The answer lies in something humanity has relied upon for thousands of years, the language of symbols. And once you learn to recognize that language, you'll begin seeing messages where others see only coincidence. The language of symbols. If the unconscious is trying to communicate with you, it does not do so in ordinary language. It doesn't send emails. It doesn't speak in complete sentences. It doesn't announce itself with certainty. Instead, it speaks the way it always has, through symbols. This is one of the most misunderstood ideas in modern life. Most people assume symbols are merely decorative, interesting images, cultural traditions, ancient relics from less sophisticated times. But Jung discovered something very different. Symbols are living bridges between the conscious and unconscious mind. They carry meanings too large to fit into ordinary words. In fact, some truths cannot be understood intellectually until they are first experienced symbolically. Think about a dream. In a dream, your unconscious rarely speaks directly. It doesn't simply tell you, you are afraid of change. Instead, it might show you standing before a collapsing bridge, or walking through an abandoned house, or losing your way in a forest. The image comes first. The understanding comes later, because symbols bypass the defenses of the rational mind. They speak directly to deeper layers of the psyche. And synchronicities often operate through exactly the same mechanism. The unconscious presents symbols externally through meaningful events. A symbol appears, then appears again, and again, until you finally notice it. Many people experience this with numbers, particularly repeating sequences. 1111, 222, 333, again and again. Now, Jung himself did not focus heavily on angel numbers, as modern spiritual culture often does. What interested him was something deeper. Why does a particular symbol suddenly become charged with meaning? Why does it seem to follow someone during a specific period of life? The answer may have less to do with the number itself and more to do with what is happening inside the individual. The psyche selects symbols that resonate with its current state. The symbol becomes a mirror, a reflection, a message, not because the number itself possesses magical power, but because meaning has become attached to it. Imagine two people looking at the same object. One sees nothing unusual. The other feels a profound emotional response. The difference is not the object. The difference is the relationship between the symbol and the unconscious mind. This is why symbols and synchronicities are often deeply personal. A particular bird, a specific song, a recurring phrase, a name, a place, an image, something that seems insignificant to everyone else, yet somehow carries enormous weight for you. The unconscious chooses a language it knows you will understand, and often it repeats that language until you pay attention. Consider how frequently major life transitions are accompanied by symbolic experiences. A person contemplating a career change suddenly encounters the same message repeatedly. A person leaving a relationship begins dreaming of doors opening and closing. Someone struggling with purpose keeps meeting people who speak about the exact issue they have been wrestling with internally. At first, these events seem random. Then the repetition becomes impossible to ignore. Eventually, a pattern emerges, and the pattern points towards something important. This is why Jung believes symbols are not merely psychological decorations. They are instruments of transformation. They reveal what consciousness is not yet fully aware of. They illuminate hidden conflicts, hidden desires, hidden fears, hidden possibilities, and perhaps most importantly, they reveal where growth is trying to occur. Imagine walking through a dark forest at night. You have no map, no clear path, no certainty. Then suddenly you notice small lanterns appearing along the trail. Each one illuminates only a few feet ahead, not the entire journey, just the next step. This is how symbols often function. They rarely reveal the whole future. They simply illuminate what needs attention now. The next step, the next realization, the next transformation. Unfortunately, most people ignore these lanterns, not because they lack intelligence, but because modern culture rarely teaches us how to interpret symbolic experience. We are trained to ask, what caused this? Instead of asking, what does this mean? And yet, meaning may be the more important question, because the deepest movements of life are often driven by meaning rather than mechanism. You don't marry someone because of mathematics. You don't discover your purpose through statistics. You don't transform because of logic alone. You transform because something meaningful reaches you at the right moment. And when that happens, life changes. This is precisely why synchronicities often intensify during periods of crisis, when your old identity is breaking apart, when your familiar world is dissolving, when uncertainty becomes unavoidable. At those moments, the unconscious becomes louder, the symbols become stronger, the signs become more frequent, almost as if something inside you is desperately trying to guide you toward the next stage of your journey. And that brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of synchronicity. Why do these experiences seem to explode into our lives precisely when everything is changing? Why do they appear most intensely during moments of transition? The answer reveals something profound about the nature of transformation itself. Because what feels like chaos on the surface may actually be the beginning of a deeper awakening. Why synchronicities appear during times of change. Think back to the most difficult period of your life. Not the easiest, not the most comfortable, the most challenging. The season when everything felt uncertain. The season when the old version of you could no longer continue. For many people, this is exactly when synchronicities begin appearing. Not during stability, not during routine, but during transformation, a divorce, the loss of a job, a move to a new city, a spiritual awakening, a personal crisis, a health challenge, the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Again and again, people report the same phenomenon. The signs become stronger, the patterns become more obvious, the meaningful coincidences become impossible to ignore. Why? Because transformation creates a unique psychological condition. It weakens the structures of the old self. Most people spend years constructing an identity, a story about who they are, what they believe, where they're going, how life works. This story provides stability, predictability, control, but eventually life challenges that story. Something happens that no longer fits, and suddenly the identity begins to crack. This can feel terrifying because the ego prefers certainty. It wants familiar answers, known paths, reliable structures. Yet growth often requires the destruction of what no longer serves us. Jung understood this deeply. He believed that genuine transformation always involves a symbolic death, not physical death, psychological death, the death of an outdated version of yourself. And whenever such a death occurs, the unconscious becomes extremely active, dreams intensify, emotions deepen, symbols emerge, and synchronicities multiply. Why? Because the psyche is trying to guide the transition. Imagine a caterpillar entering a cocoon. From the outside, it appears as if everything is falling apart. The old form dissolves completely. Chaos replaces order. Structure disappears. Yet hidden within that chaos is an intelligence directing the transformation. The breakdown is actually part of the breakthrough. Human beings undergo similar processes. There are moments when your life appears to be unraveling, when nothing makes sense, when the future becomes uncertain. Yet beneath the surface, a deeper process may already be underway. The emergence of a new identity, a more authentic self, a more aligned path. And synchronicities often serve as markers along that journey. They appear like signposts, small reminders that although you cannot see the entire road, you are not moving blindly. This doesn't mean every challenge carries an immediate answer, nor does it mean every coincidence contains cosmic instructions. Jung never suggested such simplistic interpretations. What he suggested was far more subtle. That moment of transformation created opportunities for deeper communication between conscious and unconscious life. And when that communication strengthens, synchronicities naturally increase. The psyche begins revealing patterns that were previously invisible, connections that were previously hidden, possibilities that were previously unimaginable. This is why some of the most powerful synchronicities occur precisely when a person is standing at a crossroads, because crossroads force awareness. They force reflection. They force change. And change is the environment where the soul speaks most clearly. Yet there is another reason synchronicities become stronger during transformation, a reason that Jung believed many people overlook. Sometimes the signs are not pointing toward what you should embrace. Sometimes they are pointing toward what you are desperately trying to avoid. And that takes us into one of the deepest and most uncomfortable aspects of Jung's psychology, the shadow, the hidden part of yourself that may be influencing your life far more than you realize. The shadow and the signs you keep ignoring. Of all Carl Jung's ideas, none is more powerful or more unsettling than the concept of the shadow. Because while most people want to believe synchronicities are messages about destiny, purpose, and opportunity, Jung understood something deeper. Sometimes the signs are not guiding you toward what you want. Sometimes they are guiding you toward what you've been avoiding. The shadow is the hidden part of yourself, the aspects of your personality that were rejected, suppressed, denied, or forgotten, the fears you refuse to face, the emotions you push away, the desires you pretend don't exist, the truths you don't want to acknowledge. Every human being has a shadow, no exceptions. As children, we quickly learn which parts of ourselves are accepted and which parts are rejected. Perhaps you were taught that anger was wrong, so you buried it. Perhaps you were taught that vulnerability was weakness, so you hid it. Perhaps you were taught that ambition was selfish, or that sensitivity was embarrassing, or that expressing your true thoughts would make people dislike you. Slowly, pieces of your authentic self disappeared into the unconscious, not because they vanished, because they were pushed into darkness. And what is hidden does not stop existing. It simply operates from the shadows, influencing your decisions, your relationships, your fears, your habits, your entire life. This is where synchronicities become particularly fascinating, because the psyche often uses them to bring shadow material into awareness. Imagine that there is a lesson you desperately need to learn, a truth you need to confront, a fear you need to face. The unconscious will often begin presenting that lesson repeatedly through different people, different situations, different symbols. The same message arrives wearing different disguises. Have you ever noticed certain patterns repeating throughout your life? The same type of relationship, the same conflict, the same disappointment, the same emotional wound. Again and again, different faces, different circumstances, same underlying pattern. Most people believe they're unlucky. Jung would ask a different question. What is trying to become conscious? Because until something is brought into awareness, it tends to repeat itself. The unconscious repeats what consciousness refuses to learn. This is why some synchronicities feel uncomfortable, not inspiring, not exciting, uncomfortable, because they expose something we would rather ignore. Perhaps you keep encountering opportunities to speak your truth, but fear prevents you from acting. Perhaps life repeatedly pushes you toward independence, but you continue seeking approval. Perhaps every meaningful sign points toward change, yet you cling to familiarity. The synchronicity isn't the lesson. The synchronicity points toward the lesson, and until the lesson is integrated, the pattern often returns. Again, and again, and again. Think about how life teaches. Rarely through a single event, more often through repetition. A theme emerges, a symbol appears, a challenge repeats. Eventually, you realize that life is not punishing you. It is educating you. The shadow is often revealed through exactly these recurring patterns, not because the universe is against you, but because something inside you is asking to be seen. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Consider that for a moment. How many experiences have you labeled as fate? How many recurring problems? How many repeated disappointments? How many mysterious patterns? What if some of them were invitations? Invitations to become aware, to see what was previously hidden, to reclaim parts of yourself that have been living in darkness. Because every journey of transformation eventually reaches the same threshold. The moment when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That question changes everything, because it transforms synchronicities from curiosities into tools for growth. It shifts your relationship with reality itself. Suddenly, every meaningful coincidence becomes an opportunity. Every repeated symbol becomes a clue. Every pattern becomes a doorway. And once you begin looking through that lens, you start recognizing something extraordinary. Not every coincidence is a synchronicity, but every true synchronicity carries a distinct feeling, a unique psychological signature, a quality that sets it apart from ordinary events. The question is, how do you recognize it? How do you know when something is genuinely meaningful? Let's go deeper. How to recognize a true synchronicity. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming every unusual event is a synchronicity. Jung never suggested that. Not every repeated number is a message. Not every coincidence is significant. Not every strange event carries hidden meaning. So how do you know the difference? How do you recognize a true synchronicity? Interestingly, the answer has less to do with the event itself and more to do with your experience of it, because genuine synchronicities tend to carry three distinct qualities. The first is emotional impact. A true synchronicity doesn't feel neutral. It catches your attention. It creates a moment of pause, sometimes even a sense of awe. It's as though something inside you immediately recognizes a significance before your rational mind has time to explain it. You feel it, not because you're forcing meaning onto the event, but because meaning arrives with the event. The second quality is relevance. The synchronicity directly connects to something happening in your life. A question, a fear, a decision, a transition, a longing. The event seems strangely related to your inner world. This is what separates meaningful coincidence from random coincidence. The connection feels precise, almost personal, as if reality somehow understands what you're going through. The third quality is transformation. A true synchronicity changes something, perhaps only slightly, perhaps profoundly, but it shifts your perspective. It alters your awareness. It invites a new possibility. Afterward, you're not exactly the same person you were before. This is crucial because synchronicities are not merely interesting. They are transformative. Their purpose is not entertainment. Their purpose is awakening. Imagine walking through life asleep, moving automatically, repeating the same routines, the same thoughts, the same assumptions. Then suddenly something happens, a meaningful coincidence, a symbol, an encounter, a perfectly timed message. And for a moment, you wake up. You become aware, fully present, fully alive. That moment of awakening is one of the greatest gifts synchronicity can offer, because awareness is the beginning of transformation, and transformation is the true purpose behind all meaningful signs. Yet there is something even more remarkable. Once you begin paying attention to synchronicities, something strange often occurs. The signs seem to increase. The patterns become clearer. The connections become stronger. It's almost as if reality begins responding to your awareness. And that raises a fascinating question. Do synchronicities simply happen to us? Or do we somehow participate in their appearance? The answer may completely change how you understand your relationship with reality itself. Because the moment you begin paying attention, life often begins responding in ways that seem almost impossible to explain. And that is where our journey reaches its most profound revelation. Let's go deeper. The moment life begins to respond. There comes a moment in every person's journey when something subtle begins to change. Not necessarily in the external world, not immediately, but within. A shift in perception, a shift in awareness, a shift in the way reality is experienced. At first, nothing appears different. You wake up, go to work, talk to the same people, follow the same routines. The world looks exactly as it always has. Yet somehow, it doesn't feel the same, because you have begun paying attention. And attention is one of the most powerful forces available to a human being. Where attention goes, awareness follows. And where awareness expands, hidden patterns become visible. Many people believe synchronicities suddenly appear when they begin a spiritual journey. But perhaps something else is happening. Perhaps the signs were always there. The opportunities, the symbols, the meaningful encounters, the moments of perfect timing. Perhaps they have always existed. What changes is your ability to see them. Imagine standing in a crowded city at night. Thousands of lights surround you. Yet if you spend your entire life looking at the ground, you'll never notice the stars above. The stars were never absent. Your attention simply wasn't directed toward them. The same may be true of synchronicities. The more conscious you become, the more reality seems alive with meaning. You begin noticing connections that previously escaped your awareness. Conversations arrive at the perfect moment. Books appear when you need them. Answers emerge before you even finish asking the question. People enter your life carrying exactly the lesson you're ready to learn. And gradually, a profound realization begins to emerge. Life is not merely something happening to you. You are participating in it, co-creating it, responding to it, engaging with it. This does not mean you control everything. Far from it. Jung never claimed that human beings could dictate reality through wishful thinking. Life remains mysterious, unpredictable, complex, yet he did believe that consciousness matters, that your relationship with reality influences what becomes visible to you. Think about two people walking through the same forest. One sees only trees. The other notices tracks, patterns, signs, subtle movements. Neither person is wrong, but one is perceiving more. The difference is awareness, and awareness changes everything. Because once you begin recognizing meaningful patterns, you stop feeling completely lost. You stop viewing yourself as a victim of random circumstances. You begin sensing that your experiences belong to a larger story, a story still unfolding, a story that contains challenges, certainly, but also guidance, direction, purpose, meaning. This is why many people describe synchronicities as life-changing, not because the events themselves are extraordinary, but because they transform the way reality is understood. Suddenly, the universe no longer feels empty. Your struggles no longer feel meaningless. Your journey no longer feels accidental. Instead, life begins to feel participatory, responsive, alive. And when that happens, something remarkable occurs. Trust begins to replace fear. Curiosity begins to replace doubt. Presence begins to replace anxiety. because you realize you don't need every answer today. You only need the next step, the next insight, the next opportunity, the next signpost along the path. And perhaps that is the true purpose of synchronicity, not to reveal your entire future, but to remind you that you are not walking through life blindly. That meaning exists. That growth is occurring. That transformation is possible. That beneath the apparent chaos of existence, a deeper order may be quietly unfolding. The signs were never meant to replace your choices. They were meant to illuminate them. And when you understand that, synchronicities stop being mysterious phenomena. They become companions on the journey. Reminders that even in moments of uncertainty, something deeper may be guiding your evolution. And that brings us to the final question. What will you do now? Now that you have seen the possibility. Now that you have heard the whispers beneath ordinary reality. Now that you understand what synchronicities may truly represent. The answer to that question will determine everything that comes next. Nothing is random. Perhaps for years, life has been trying to get your attention, not through dramatic miracles, not through supernatural spectacles, but through quiet moments, a conversation, a dream, a symbol, a coincidence that felt too meaningful to ignore. Perhaps those moments were not interruptions. Perhaps they were invitations. Invitations to become more aware, more present, more connected to the deeper dimensions of your own existence. Carl Jung spent his life exploring the mysteries of the human psyche, and after decades of research, observation, and reflection, he reached a conclusion that continues to challenge the modern world. Human beings are not separate from meaning. Meaning is woven into the fabric of our lives. It appears through symbols, through dreams, through relationships, through unexpected encounters, and sometimes through synchronicities, those strange moments when the inner world and the outer world seem a touch, when reality briefly reveals a hidden pattern, when something inside you whispers, "Pay attention." Maybe that whisper has been present for a long time. Maybe you've heard it before, in moments of uncertainty, in moments of transition, in moments when life seemed determined to place the same lesson in front of you again and again. And perhaps now you understand why. Because synchronicities are not really about predicting the future. They are about awakening in the present. They are reminders that consciousness matters, that awareness matters, that the journey unfolded within you is just as important as the events unfolding around you. The people who experience the most meaningful synchronicities are not necessarily the luckiest people. They are often the most attentive, the most reflective, the most willing to listen. They understand that life speaks in subtle ways. And because they listen, they begin noticing what others overlook. So the next time something unusual happens, a symbol appears repeatedly, a chance encounter changes your direction, a message arrives exactly when you need it, a coincidence feels impossibly precise. Pause. Don't rush to explain it away. Don't immediately dismiss it. Simply ask yourself, what might this be trying to show me? You may not receive an answer immediately, but the question itself opens a door into deeper awareness, a door into greater understanding, a door into the hidden relationship between your inner world and the world around you. Because whether synchronicities originate from the unconscious, from a deeper order of reality, or from mysteries we have yet to fully understand, one truth remains. Life becomes richer when you pay attention. Life becomes more meaningful when you listen. Life becomes more transformative when you remain open to the possibility that not everything is random. And perhaps the greatest synchronicity of all is realizing that the signs were never trying to control your destiny. They were trying to help you discover it. So as you leave this video, carry one simple thought with you. The next meaningful coincidence you encounter may not be an accident. It may be an invitation to wake up, to trust, to grow, to become, because the path has always been there. The symbols have always been there. The signs have always been there, waiting patiently for the moment you were finally ready to see them. And maybe that moment is now. If this message resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Nothing is random. And remember, the universe may speak in whispers, but for those willing to listen, those whispers can change an entire life.